Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we're going to cover the topic of carpal tunnel syndrome. And we're going to talk about what carpal tunnel syndrome is, which some of you may already know. But we're going to go through one or two exercises to help treat the symptoms of carpal tunnel syndrome, some things that I find work really well clinically that tend to get results and get them relatively quickly. But as we do with every video, basically, we want to give you some things to help treat the symptoms, but we also want to initiate a conversation about why those symptoms are there in the first place. And one of the failings, I guess, of modern medicine and the industry as a whole is that we're very good at focusing in on that carpal tunnel area, being really obsessed by the symptoms, doing everything that we can, including drugs, medications, surgeries, injections, things that with the best intentions to help relieve your symptoms, but we're not taking a step back and also working hard on the things that have caused those symptoms to be there. So if you hang around towards the end of the video, we're going to go through maybe one or two really crucial concepts that cover why carpal tunnel tends to happen, why it hangs around, and what you can do to make sure that you get it to go away faster and stay away. We want to get you to the point where you used to have carpal tunnel syndrome. You're not someone who's hoping that it doesn't come back at some point. We're going to take the uncertainty out of it and just give you some specific direction to focus on and to work towards. So as you said, the idea with carpal tunnel syndrome, it's really simple. There's an anatomical area called your carpal tunnel, and what that is basically is it's created by the floor and the sides of that are your carpal bones, the bones of at the base of your hand and the wrist, and those bones basically are covered, or there's a connective tissue that runs over the top that connects from one side of your hand to the other, the base of your hand to the other, and it forms the roof. And in between that goes the median nerve, which is a nerve that comes from your neck, runs out through your armpit, down through the center of your forearm, through that gap, and it supplies generally the main three fingers, or the middle three fingers, sorry, of your hand. So classic symptoms tend to be the neural symptoms like burning, tingling, numbness in those three fingers. You can get it on the inside of the other two fingers potentially, but generally if you had some issues with that part of your hand, we tend to see that as more of a sign of carpal tunnel syndrome. And it's often characterized by people who sort of have to flick their hands, trying to get some blood flow back into the area. But in actual fact, it's just an expression of that nerve dysfunction in a local area at the base of your hand. So as we said before, one of the issues about this is that because we're so very confident, we've got a name for it, there's a location, and the mechanisms of that cause the specific local dysfunction is quite well known. That's where most of our focus is on. So the amount of people that end up having carpal tunnel surgery or a release of that sort of carpal tunnel area to feed some more slack into the area to help settle their symptoms is quite high. But as I said before, just treating this area neglects everything else, because carpal tunnel syndrome doesn't just happen for no reason at all. There's a very basic reason that causes it, but the things that cause carpal tunnel syndrome don't stand out. They're not something that you'll probably see or notice occurring until you get to the point where you start to get some carpal tunnel symptoms. And that's indicative of a lot of dysfunction that we see, where you don't know there's a problem until there's a problem, and all the underlying issues that have to build up to get to that point go completely unnoticed because no one's supposed to care about them. No one knows to look for something that you don't know is there. So hopefully, again, by the end of the video, you'll have a good understanding of that. So I guess to begin with, to respect the symptoms that you've got, there's two really simple things that I like to do for patients with carpal tunnel syndrome, and they tend to center on the forearm itself. So anyone who has carpal tunnel syndrome, you'll find that a lot of the musculature in the forearm here can get really tight. And again, it can put extra tension and sort of pressure through that wrist and forearm. It can decrease the space that nerve has to work and slide and glide in and out of that area really simply. And we can sort of feed a bit more slack into that area and take some of the pressure and the tension away from that. Now, the first way to do that is basically with your hands. So if you have some moisturizer or something just to decrease the friction, what you can do with your fingers or your thumb or fingers, you can go hunting in those forearm muscles for areas of tightness and tenderness. And again, as we'll get to in a little bit with the cause of carpal tunnel syndrome, we're not always just interested in what feels tender, although that is important. We're also looking for tightness that may not be tender to touch. It may not even give you some symptoms, but we're looking for something that feels knotted up, thicker than it might on the other side, for example. So if you remember that median nerve tends to go straight through the center or the middle of that forearm, either side of that, you've got your, if you make a fist and sort of bend that wrist towards you, you'll tend to build up some of these muscles on the inside half of your forearm. Those muscles can get quite tight. So just digging into those areas, digging your fingers in and sort of moving it backwards and forwards, trying to shear free any connective tissue that's glued down into that fascia that's tight or restricted, and try and free up as much of that mechanical restriction as possible. As we move to the other side, we'll tend to get the muscles that attach to the outside of the elbow, which tend to extend the wrist, but there's one that sort of goes down the outside of that forearm that we can also get to. But the idea here is that you want to try and look for things that feel tight and tender and get rid of them if you feel anything. You can also do that with the ball. So if you don't like digging your fingers in, or you don't feel like it's giving you the right amount of pressure or tension, tennis ball or a lacrosse ball or a baseball, something round is really good to use. Just be aware that something like a tennis ball can slide off easily. So if you want to do this over the top of a long sleeve shirt or something, anything's fine. You just want to feel like you're getting some pressure and some tension on that. So what we can do here is you can do two things. You can dig the ball in, and again, you can shear that free. What you can also do to make it extra effective is dig it in and then twist it. So you're basically twisting it to take up some of the slack of the skin, and then it allows you to make a bigger change in the soft tissue around that area. So again, if you're putting some pressure through here and you're feeling your symptoms flare up, definitely respect them. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong, because what can happen is if you're on a spot and you're really digging in there respectfully, trying to free that up, and if you feel like there's some symptoms in your fingers brewing, if you keep doing that for a few more seconds and you feel like those symptoms start to regress, then you're clearly doing something worthwhile. On the other hand, if your symptoms don't regress, but putting some pressure on a spot flares up your symptoms, then you know that that particular part of the whole machine is important. So if it's too intense to use a ball, then come back to maybe some more gentle massage, but do something to try and free up that part of your forearm. But just by using your fingers or a ball, you can automatically, or you should automatically feel that there's increased mobility in that area. And that's just going to feed some mechanical slack to that part of your hand and wrist, take some of the tension off, and over time help those symptoms settle. So that tends to take care of a lot of the connective tissue, some of the soft tissue as well, but we also want to make sure that we're addressing any muscular tightness that's in there. And again, this isn't a fancy stretch. It's probably not even that interesting. It's very, very simple. It's basically just bending your wrist back. Now, what you might find that you'll need to do here is, with your elbow bent, just bending that wrist back may not necessarily give you a sensation that you're hitting anything extra tight. So you might need to straighten that arm out. And you can do this a number of ways. You can do this with your hand sort of up. You can do it with your hand down. I like to do it more with your hand down. It just seems a bit easier to navigate the stretch. You can do it up against a wall. You can do it on the floor. I don't know if you can see this, on the floor, to give you that extra tension. So you can have your hands flat on the ground and then come back off that to really load up the tension there. Anything you want to do, you just want to feel like you're hitting and specifically targeting areas that feel tight. So the key to any stretch, again, as we talk about all the time on the channel, is you need to find a position that gives you a good stretch. You can rotate your arm, rotate your wrist backwards and forwards to find that. So for me, that's a really nice position. Just holding a stretch is useless. We never really knew that until recently. We used to think that just holding a stretch over time would make a difference. Thankfully, we've found something far better, and all that is just finding a stretch wherever that tightness is. You want to push back against that stretch. So if I'm bending my wrist back to find it, I'm essentially trying to push my wrist and my hand back into the other hand, and all you're doing is trying to activate that tightness. So if you can see, I don't know if you can see this with my forearm, as I bend it back and put it onto some tension, when I activate those muscles, you should see those muscles tense up. That's what we want. We want to get your brain and nervous system involved. You want to hold it for 5 to 10 seconds. And then when you relax, you should actually feel like you've got a little bit more movement or room to move in that stretch. And then same thing again, tense those muscles up again, hold it for a few seconds, 5 to 10 seconds. And then when you relax, you should find it goes a little bit further. You've got a little bit more range of motion there. And again, in terms of the ability to bend my wrists, this one feels like it's freer straight away, and it should always feel that way. You should always feel like you've done something, because if you don't see a change, you haven't made a change. So anything that you do as someone trying to improve your flexibility, if you're not seeing an immediate change, then you're wasting your time. And either what you're doing isn't necessarily hitting the right areas, or you might need to just tweak how you do the exercise, making sure that you contract those muscles when they're on stretch so that they pull apart, your brain relaxes them, and then you can introduce more range of motion instantaneously. So in terms of the symptoms, by really going after a lot of the soft tissue and connective tissue of that forearm, you can feed a lot of slack into that carpal tunnel area and allow that to function better. So you can do the same thing through your hand if you want to, but traditionally there's a lot of tightness in this area that sets that up to fail. So those two exercises I find really helpful to try and get to some of the everyday symptoms of carpal tunnel syndrome. But as you said, more importantly, we need to have a conversation about why those symptoms are there in the first place. What's conspired against you to make that completely normal structure, that completely normal area and anatomy turn bad? What's gone wrong to cause that? And if you've been following these videos a lot, you'll understand hopefully that the majority of problems that happen with the upper limb consequently stem back to a problem with your neck and upper back. You can't have a lot of traumatic problems, so problems that just come out of nowhere. If you fall and land on something or get hit by something, then clearly an accident can be bad enough to surpass your tissue's tolerance. But the majority of problems that people have, particularly with their upper body, they come on gradually. There's not really a moment that kicks it into gear. It's just something that it just builds up and builds up to the point where it's there and it just doesn't go away on its own. And the reason for that generally comes back to more of a central problem. So in order to understand and solve carpal tunnel syndrome, we need to make sure that you're exploring and improving the health and function of your upper back and your neck. Because as we said right at the start, that median nerve comes sort of from your fingers, or it ends in your fingers, but if you trace it all the way back up, it then goes into your armpits and then comes up in from the base of your neck and upper back. So if these areas have become stiff and tight, then essentially you've pulled all this extra slack out of the nerve, you've changed the function and the natural order of things to a degree where something can start to go wrong. So if you're just treating the symptoms of what's gone wrong and not undoing the dysfunction that's occurred up here, then again, we're not solving anything, and we're not putting you in a position where you can be someone who used to have carpal tunnel syndrome. So again, if you follow us, if you follow the channel, you know really well, one of the best exercises we've ever seen to free up the neck and upper back is using a ball. So the same ball that you used down here, you can use to your neck and upper back. And what it entails is, if you know that you've got those bones down the middle, so at the back, the bones that run down the middle that you can feel when you put your hands there, we want to place the ball on those bumps and just let it roll immediately off to the side onto the shelf that you'll feel sort of when you do that. And what we want to see when this happens is you want to go looking for something that feels stiff, tight, and or tender. So it doesn't have to be tender. And again, if you follow these videos, you'll know we're looking for stiffness and tightness. We're looking for rustiness. We're looking for that anchor that's creating this problem that's traveling down the arm and creating the dysfunction in an area that doesn't necessarily seem connected, even though it obviously is. So the best way to do this is to place the ball. If you start at the bump at the base of your neck, the obvious one that everyone has, place the ball right in the middle and then just let the ball roll off to the side. And again, you can lie down on your back for this, but again, for the purposes of this video, it's really useful to do it up against a wall. So again, I'm in the middle here. I'm just going to let it roll immediately off to the side, and I do need to twist a little bit just to make sure that I can keep contact with the ball. If I just move to the side, then the ball can easily sort of shoot out the side. So we're in the middle and just coming off to the side here. And all you're looking for, again, is stiffness, tightness, and maybe tenderness. But the idea is you want to get a sense of how stiff and tight this feels, how easy the ball sinks in, and then immediately compare it to the other side. And for me, this side doesn't feel anywhere near as tight or tender. Not that the other side was tender, but it just feels like it sinks in easier. And when I come back to this side, it doesn't feel like it sinks in as well. And if I press here, and if I felt some symptoms into those fingers, for example, then you'll know really quickly which particular segment or which level you need to spend the most time on to free that up. So all the exercise is that you want to find that spot and stay here. So if you've got some TV to watch, if you've got a book to read, something to do on your phone, again, you can do this lying down. It's a really relaxed exercise. It's very easy, but we want to get you to spend time here. So 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, as long as you can be bothered until you feel that these areas become less stiff and tight. Once you've done that, then just move the ball down a little bit or up a little bit. Go hunting for the next area that feels stiff and tight for you. Now, I'd highly recommend making sure that you go down to about the mid-shoulder blade area, because as soon as you get to that upper back, not only do you have the spinal joints that can get stiff, but you have all these rib joints now that attach into that spine that can also be a silo for stiffness as well, or a place for stiffness. So you want to make sure that when you come down onto the upper back, that you start in the middle, roll off to the side to hit the shelf where the spinal column is. You'll be on the joints. Once you spend some time here, you want to move out again further so you can hit the ribs. And again, you'll find there'll be a whole bunch of ribs that are stiff and tight as well. They all have to be cleared up. You need them to free up in order for that nerve and the areas that respond with these areas can start to function better. So from an exercise perspective, if you can free up your neck and upper back with something as simple as a ball, obviously physical therapy can help with that, whether that's some pushing through the joints to free them up. Doesn't matter how you do it, you want to feel like that those areas become looser, and then you need to feel like your symptoms are responding to that. So I guess that, from what I see clinically, is the secret to carpal tunnel syndrome, where you've got all this central stiffness and tightness that doesn't hurt generally day to day. You don't notice, you might not even feel stiff moving around day to day, but when you get a ball out and go hunting, invariably there's a bunch of stiff and tight spots that you probably had no idea were there until you went looking for them. So that's probably one of the secrets, I think, to sort of conquering carpal tunnel. Now, again, following on from that, so if we're saying that the neck and upper back become a problem, maybe a covert problem first, and that sort of filters down and creates a problem down here, again, there has to be a reason why that neck and upper back becomes stiff. And again, if you follow these videos, you'll know where we're going with this. The only way, or not the only way, but the main reason something becomes stiff is because we change the way we load it. So if you're someone who uses your phone a lot, if you're on the computer a lot, if you are in a position a lot where you're either looking down or hinging down through those areas to do something, you're just consistently loading up those areas, asking them to become stiff and tight without realizing it. So we often find when we start to talk with people who have carpal tunnel syndrome, they have either a hobby or a job requirements or an activity that they do, a position that they get into consistently throughout the day. And it may not be one position, but there's generally a theme involved where someone might be on their phone for a while, or they might sit in a position on the couch for an hour or two to watch a movie, but that's the same position they get into when they're on the computer or when they're driving the car. It's the same thing. So you need to take a step back and try and understand how close to a good standing position you are, so that when you sit, are you in that same position, or do you then just default into a crappy shape at the same time? Because again, if you're working really hard to free up all this tissue, to free up your neck and back, if you then just put everything back in a crappy position throughout the day, then you're not really breaking the cycle. And it's hard to make permanent change if you're just unknowingly asking that tissue to keep becoming dysfunctional, like it did for that to become sore in the first place. So hopefully that's really helpful. Again, if you've had any surgery or you're up for surgery soon, make sure that you've at least had a really good go at trying to free this stuff up and analyzing your postures and positions, because that alone could be the missing piece that you're looking for before the need for surgery. And there's some people that are far enough down that path where surgery may be an option and it may be something that you have to do. But once you've had it, once you've recovered, if you're not working on all of these things that got you there in the first place, then again, we can't confidently say that you fixed it and that it's never going to come back again, or something else isn't going to come back that feeds off those bad things. So again, hopefully that was helpful. If you have any issues, please let us know in the comments below. Please like if you did enjoy the video and subscribe if you are new. But until next time, we'll see you soon. Bye.